Welcome to Channel 24. Michael Sheitelman, political analyst and writer, is joining me now. Michael, good evening.
Good evening, Natalia.
So, Michael, hot topic of the day, I would say. The International Olympic Committee disqualified Ukrainian skeleton racer Vladislav Heraskevich because he wanted to compete in a helmet with the images of Ukrainian athletes killed in the Russia's war against Ukraine. Michael, how would you read this behavior here, and what messages are they sending to Ukraine, to the world, to Russia?
You know, the fact itself that we now watch the Olympics is very controversial. The Olympic idea in the ancient Greece was the idea of peace. And as you remember, all the wars were stopped during the Olympics. And this is the reason why ancient Olympic Games, they survived more than 10 centuries, more than 1,000 years. They had about 400 Olympic Games consequently. Yeah. Now we are witnesses of Olympic Games number 25. In ancient Greece, they kept the tradition during 1,000 years and 400 Olympic Games, and we not 400, sorry, it was about 300 Olympic Games, and we just organized 25 Olympic Games, which is very big difference. And we are not sure that next games will be the real games. And also during these games, we had breaks during First World War, Second. And also during Cold War, by the way. Formally, we had Olympic Games in Moscow and then Los Angeles, but in first case, it was only Eastern Bloc which participated in Moscow Olympic Games and only Western Bloc in Los Angeles Games. So now we again have very non-peace and not Olympic situation. When we can't, for example, invite Russians and Belarusians to these games because they continue the war against Ukraine. And these Olympics was not exactly Olympics. And the question is, could Olympic Games be absolutely separate from real world? Not only from politics, but from real world. Let's start from separate Olympics from politics. All of us watched at least once the opening ceremony of Olympic Games. And what we could see the demonstration with sportsmen and sportwomen with national flags and with national and political event. And when we watch any sport, we watch the sport with flags. This is state flags, so it is political event. If Olympic Games were out of politics, we will never see any flags. And I will bring you sport which is not inside the politics. For example, Formula One or NHL hockey games or NBA, we don't see any flags, any countries, any anthems, nothing. So we could say this is out of politics, but not the Olympic Games. Olympic Games is a gathering of different nations, and each nation could demonstrate what is current situation in this country, in these nations, and what we care about. So then Ukrainian athlete come with a special helmet, which is helmet of memory. So it looks like each one from other world could respect that and could join that. By the way, after the disqualification, as we know, very many athletes from different countries, they supported our sportsmen and they supported all the history of helmet of memory, which means that sportsmen and participants of Olympic Games, they are not out of politics, and they know about war and they care about that, but not organizers of these games.
And you know what's really interesting? I don't remember, Michael, when my news feed, social media feed was full of this issue, to be honest. with a Ukrainian athlete. And I was wondering, everything that you're talking about, the flags, and I was thinking, everybody performing on the Olympic Games in a helmet with their own things and issues. I was checking, the different participations helmets. So, and a Ukrainian sportsman, he didn't want to put like, okay, let it put me, I cannot swear on air, but F-U-C-K Russia, right? He was not putting that. It's just the memory of the people. So
yeah, but we know the reason. We know the reason, absolutely. By the way, in previous Summer Olympic Games in Tokyo, there were some memory ceremony for the victims of COVID virus. Yeah.
oh,
So
okay.
when virus killed somebody, we could organize memory ceremony. But when Russians killed somebody, we can't organize memory ceremony. Yeah, that is very strange comparison. But the real reason that in world sport, Russia is very influential country. They pay a lot of money and bribes to all the Olympic bureaucrats and all the sport bureaucrats all around the world, by the way. Just 1 week ago, we had another scandal in world football. Then the head of FIFA, Giovanni Infantino, he offered to return Russian football players, the Russian football teams to world competitions. And he offered to the conference of FIFA to vote for that. But conference did not agree to vote. Not vote again, not what no, but they just said that they will not support the idea of bringing Russians back. But why Infantino did that? Because he is under Russian influence. And we could see that in a lot of international federations stays Russian oligarchs. For example, just a second, biathlon in the past, Mikhail Prokhorov, who was a Russian oligarch, he was the head of worldwide biathlon, for example. And we could bring a lot of another examples for that. So Russians, they pay for this sport. We have commercial sport and not commercial sport. Football, for example, or ice hockey or basketball, this is commercial sport. They don't need oligarchs' money. But Olympic Games, this is mostly the sport without money. Like luges, for example, which is and skeleton, this is not so commercial. This is very expensive, and you can't bring enough sponsors. You can't bring enough audience to pay for that. So generally, after each of sportsmen or each of the kind of sport stays somebody like cashbacks. Yeah, and sometimes it is Russians. So Russians, they have very big influence in all the Olympic movement all around the world.
And I was watching, the after, how is she calling? The president, Kirsti Coventry, she started to cry on camera after Heraskevich was disqualified. And I was like, why she's crying? I mean, I understand why our Ukrainian athlete is crying, why his father was so disappointed and sad. But she's kind of trying to draw attention to her. Like, see, we are crying on camera. We're so sorry.
Yeah, it is not her decision, by the way. From formal point of view, it is not her decision. This is decision of some, I don't remember the name of this Olympic committee, but this is the special committee. And from formal point of view, she is not part of this decision. She just brought the decision of the court. And by the way, we will have also another stage, like a appeal court of Olympic movement. But it does not help to to return our sport guy to the competition.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah. But no, not the first time. And during all the war, a lot of international organizations, they tried to push back Russians to international competitions to say, wow, these guys were not in politics. And for my sorrow, sports, world sport sometimes owned by Russians, because it is very corrupt. For example, I could bring you the examples of world football. Almost all the former heads of world and European football, they were under criminal investigation, and they left their position as after criminal investigation. And one very important example is world hockey. The chief of world hockey, I don't remember exactly his name. He was the guy from Switzerland. And when in Belarus there were protests in 2020, and International Committee of Ice Hockey moved in 2021. World champion in ice hockey was organized in Belarus, and the committee decided to remove that from Belarus to Latvia, to Riga. And this guy, he tried to move it back to Belarus. He was, once again, he was the citizen of Switzerland. But then he retired from his position as a chief of world hockey. He moved from Switzerland to Russian Federation, to Krasnodar, and it appeared that he is the owner of the biggest cans factory in Russian Federation, and his business partner is the chief of Russian hockey, Mr. Rothenberg. That is very interesting, yeah? And he said, wow, I just invested in Russia, why not?
Well, I'm not surprised. Well, I'm listening to you, Michael, and I'm like thinking, no money, no honey. That's it. And speaking...
it depends. No, it is, I understand your idea, yeah. But it depends on really, if we are speaking about business. For example, basketball is the huge business. And nobody cares about Russian money in basketball. Because the capitalization of Chicago Bulls is more than the market capitalization of biggest Russian oil company. And nobody cares, nobody needs Russian oil money in NBA, for example. The same in NFL. Nobody needs Russian money in NFL. Nobody needs Russian money in English Premier League, because English Premier League is more expensive and bring more money than Gazprom, for example. Yeah, but when we are speaking about this, and this is the reason why Premier League or NBA or NHL, they are really out of politics, because they don't need political money and political influence. But when we are speaking about let's say small sport, not so commercialized sport, and in this case, it is only politics. This is only for politics.
Just to sum up the Vladislav Heraskevich case, I would say he already won. Even without participating at this year's Olympic Games, he already won. Michael, what made me smile today, I don't know whether you've heard it or not, I was reading about a Ukrainian cyber operation by the 256 Cyber Division. And they say, so they collected thousands of Starlink numbers used by Russian forces, contacts of soldiers, and even money for Ukraine's army. So what is your take on that, and have you heard about that?
Well, Ukrainians in this war, they appeared as a big inventors, and all the new ideas of the new weapon and new special operations was brought by Ukrainians and Ukrainian intelligence services and Ukrainian technology companies, military tech companies. And now when I speak with some representatives of war technologies, so it is like common knowledge that Ukrainian military tech is one of the leading military techs in the world, together with Israel and maybe United States. And for example, now Pentagon, they started campaign by, they buy a lot of drones now. And Ukrainian companies participate in this process. Ukrainian companies sell the drones to Pentagon, which is absolutely new. Who could believe in that 5 years ago, for example? So the same is about our intelligence services. For example, the operation, web operation, this web operation, it was not the web, not World Wide Web, but it was the operation with about the when a lot of Ukrainian small drones bombed airfields, strategic airfields in Russian Federation. So this operation recognized as one of the brilliant operations in the human history at all. And I believe that if they calculate just from formal point of view, if we calculate the damage which was caused to Russian army in this operation, this is the biggest damage in the human history to the opponent army. Because all these planes which were dismissed on this operation, they cost $10 billion or something like that. So it never in history they met anything like that. So I was not surprised about this operation, which you mentioned now. It is funny, but obvious that after this funny stays a brilliant mastermind, let's say.
Yeah, right. Because after the decision of Elon Musk and Starlink stuff, I was thinking that was obvious that Russia will try to find a way to get in this so-called white list, right? But we overplayed them. That's very pleasant news. Michael, this week is full of a lot of interesting news, and I'm always thinking about the reports that say that Witkoff and Jared Kushner offered to act as a security guarantors for Ukrainian delegation to fly directly to Moscow for talks with Putin. And there is even talk about using a U.S. government plane from Warsaw to Vnukovo airport. So why is this theater is still going on? There already other revenues have existed.
Well, this theater works then somebody organized that when we have a producer of this theater. And in this case, in this particular case about this so-called visit to Moscow of Ukrainian delegation, when I followed after this news, I never find the first source of this news. For example, at the same day, it was just yesterday, we had another fake about referendum which will be organized just in a couple of weeks in Ukraine about territories and about peace plan. And in this case, we could find the source, the original source. It was the newspaper Financial Times. But about this news about the delegation to Moscow, we just can't find who was the first informational source. So it was absolutely fake. By the way, both of these news, they are fakes. And we know who produces that. Russians, they work a lot to produce the fake news about this negotiation. Their goal in this negotiation is just to spend the time. And they very successful in that. They spent the time more than 1 year in this negotiation. Okay, they changed the delegation, they changed the format, and etc., etc., etc. But now, in February 2026, the Russian position is the same like in February 2025 when it started, the process started. So what changed? Nothing, just nothing. So what all this negotiation was about? About nothing, about empty place, and nobody moved to the peace. And all of this rhetorics about we moved to the peace and we had a success of this negotiation, this is just, I'm sorry, but this is absolute bullshit. And in this bullshit, the Russian goal is not to be guilty in this bullshit. So we produce a lot of fake information, like, okay, we almost organized the negotiation in Moscow, and just last second, Ukrainians refused to go. This is not true, because Ukrainians never agreed to this format, never agreed to come to Moscow, and nobody could bring any reason why the negotiation should be organized in Moscow. For example, by the way, in this news which you mentioned, if you paid your attention, what was the reason why Ukrainian negotiation group should go to Moscow? Not how, not who will be the guarantee guys, but why? Why to Moscow? Because then we are sitting in Abu Dhabi, and Putin is not in Abu Dhabi, and nobody in Russian delegation could take any decision. So this is the reason why we are coming to Moscow. After this logic, there are no any logic.
No logic.
Russians sent to negotiation some delegation with guys who are nobody, who can't make any decision, who can't discuss any question. So why we send any delegation? Let's ask Russians. Could you send any another delegation, another representatives? Ukrainian delegation is very representative. Ukrainian delegation is all the people who is the, let's say, second level of the state after President Zelensky. After President Zelensky, who we have? We have a Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we have Chief of Staff of Ukrainian Army, and we have the Chief of Staff of Zelensky cabinet, and all of these guys were in this delegation. So why Russian delegation is no names who can't make a decision? We never heard any reason about that.
I wouldn't be surprised that we're going to hear and see some new names and faces in a visible future from Russia's side.
But anyway, you know that President Putin, Russian President Putin, he openly said it, that only one guy could represent President Putin, and this is Mr. Medinsky. So the fact, in one interview, it was not interview, it was his speech in Bishkek in Kyrgyzstan, when he was asked, it was like press conference, in this security conference in Bishkek, and he was asked, who is your representative in negotiation? And he said, only Vladimir Medinsky is my representative in negotiation. So he openly said that these guys were nobody.
Oh, I don't know. It's so shady, just so confusing. Michael, the last one. Russia is actively blocking major social platforms and messengers, WhatsApp, Telegram, other platforms. What does that signal to you? That's a preparation for a bigger mobilization. That's what some analysts are saying. Tighter control before something new, or fear of internal cracks.
Not one of these reasons. This is the Russian strategy, and Mr. Putin's strategy is his government strategy during last 10 years at least, to close Russia, to cut it from any information from outside, to cut all the information to local population from outside. The model is the Chinese model and Soviet model. In Soviet Union, nobody from regular citizens, let's say, couldn't receive any information from outside of Soviet Union. I will just bring Olympic example to you. You don't remember this Olympic Games, but I remember Olympic Games of 1980 in Moscow. And 1980 in Moscow, all the Western countries, they refused to send their sportsmen, their delegation to Olympic Games in Moscow. And we watched Soviet TV. We couldn't know any information about that except of Soviet information, Soviet newspapers and Soviet radio and Soviet TV. And I was persuaded, I was child, but I also watched that the reason that the Western countries, they don't send their delegation because of security reason, that Moscow is not secure enough for Western guys. And we were surprised. Why? Why Moscow is not secured? What happened? What happened? And only when I found this, the Voice of America on radio set, I understood that it connected to the war in Afghanistan. We never heard about any war in Afghanistan. So this is the ideal model for Putin and for his guys, for his government, is the Soviet model or Chinese model. China built the great digital wall around China. And when you come to China, you have another internet. This is like alternative reality. We don't have our usual internet. We have another social networks, another searching machines, another messengers, all of these like Chinese. So this is the ideal for Russia. So when we are trying always to find some, on daily basis, why we, for example, blocked today this messenger. No, this is just a system. They have a plan for decades to build the new country, the new state, Russian state, which will be absolutely closed also in information and I believe in the future also in movement of people outside and inside Russian Federation. So this is not something about today's events. This is strategy. This is strategy, and it works. It is very difficult because in China, for example, they spent hundreds of billions of dollars to build this system, the Great Wall, the Great Digital Wall. And Russians, they don't have this money to build this system first, and they don't have enough technology guys, they don't have enough scientists for that, because in China they have universities, technologies, etc. Russia is low-tech country, and this is the reason why it takes decades to build that and not a couple of years like China built it in a couple of years. But we will see how they close it more and more, all their information field.
Yeah, Michael, let's be honest. We don't need a digital wall with Russia. We need a physical one.
Yeah, we need a physical, yeah.
We need a physical one. So many countries will be happy from that. And if American president want to build another wall, here's the place.
Yeah.
Here's the place.
Oh, we have a place, yeah.
Michael, thank you so much for very interesting interview, and see you next week.
See you, Nataliia. Bye. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.